And will I.
So, here is our quiz of the day. Given the following position-time graph, answer the following. Okay. By the way, look at the y-axis. Which way is up direction-wise according to this graph? So north is positive. What's negative then? South. What if they had said east? Then east would be positive. West would be negative. What if they said up? They gave us a direction. For each of the following time intervals, describe the velocity. Be sure to include direction. And I tried to walk you through it. I said, well, first find the slope. The velocity will be the same answer as the slope, but we're going to include units and the direction. Slope is rise over run. So from 0 to 6 seconds, we're talking about this section right here. What's the rise? What's the run? Or in lowest terms, 1/3, or as a decimal, 0.333333, repeating. 1, 2. Right? I said, I find it easier, Emily, to draw a little slope triangle, kind of like that, and that's 2 up, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's my rise over my run. The velocity is going to be 0.33 meters per second. How do I know meters per second? Because on the y-axis it's meters. On the x-axis it's seconds. Direction. How do I know it's north? Positive. Okay. In terms of marking this, 1 mark for the slope. If you left it as 1/3, I'm good with that. If you left it as 2/6, I'm good with that. But on your test, I won't leave it that way. I will have, as a multiple choice, 1/3 or 0.33 for you to pick from. It means you want to bring a calculator to the test. Half mark for the magnitude, half mark for the direction. If you forgot the units, you lose a half mark. That's how I would mark this on a test. Yes? Yeah, but it's really 0.3333. Yeah, carry a couple of extra decimal places. From 6 seconds to 10 seconds, what's the slope? As a number, what's the slope? 0. What's the velocity? 0. Or you could call that at rest. Is there a direction? You're not going anywhere. Is there units? Yeah, I guess technically you could say 0 meters per second, although often if it's 0, we omit the units because you're stopped. From 10 to 12 seconds, that's this interval here. What's the rise? 4 over. What's the run? 2. Is the rise 4? Yeah. Start out 2 high, end up 6 high. Slope is 2, 1 mark, or 2 over 1, 1 mark. Velocity, 2 meters per second. North, 1 mark for that, half mark off if you missed the direction or if you missed the units. Or if you got the wrong velocity. D. From 12 to 16. What's the first thing, if I was really clever, that I would write down to make sure I don't forget? Negative. Why negative? Downhill. What's the rise? Hayden, my friend, how high am I when I start?
6.
How high am I when I end?
0.
What's the rise? 6 take away 6. Over. Kenzie, my angel, how far left, right am I when I start? Louder? 12. How far left, right am I when I end? What's my run? 12 to 16. What's my run? Exactly, not like. What's my run? Folks, what's my run? 4. Right? Start at 12, end at 16. How far have you tripped? Rise over run. Negative 6 over 4 in lowest terms. Negative 3 over 2 if you went to lowest terms. Dylan, if you left it as negative 6 over 4, that's good. If you missed the negative, half mark off. Yep. If you went negative 1.5, yes. Yeah, I'll take that too. In fact, I would probably say the velocity was negative 1.5 meters per second, or 1.5 meters per second south. Technically, if you put negative and south, you'd be saying negative south. What would negative south be as a direction? North. So don't put both. Either direction or negative, not both. That's a double negative. So don't not do that. Did you go negative and south?
No, I didn't, but if you
If you did it on the written section, I'd probably try and make this worth 2 marks so I could give you lots of part marks. And I'd probably, the first time you did it, take a half mark. You know what I would do? I would take a half mark off each time. And then later on in class, when we went over the test, I'd say, if you lost more than a half mark for that mistake, come show me. I'll give you the extra halves for every other time you did it, but I'll still ding you once. That's what I would do, since you asked. I don't like taking the same mark off over and over and over for the same mistake, but I'm not going to ignore it. So I'll find a way to make it sting, but not, kill you, metaphorically. Hey, Amy, what's my slope between 16 and 18? What's my slope between 16 and 18 right here? Huh? Ah. Oh, hey, what's my velocity then? Or, Dane, what's the word for that? At rest. 18 to 20. Okay, now we're talking about this section right there. First thing I'm going to write again, hey, it's negative, downhill. What's the rise? 2. What's the run? 2. And so the slope is negative 1. As a velocity, it's negative 1 meters per second, or 1 meter per second south. I don't know if I'll give you this question as a chart like this. I'd probably just give it to you as kind of a multiple choicey thingy. Maybe. I'll be typing up the test this weekend, so we'll see. Next page over. How the heck do you do this? Now they want the displacement for each of the time intervals in question number 1. I'll tell you how you do it. Displacement is velocity times time. Justine, in part A, from 0 to 6 seconds, how many seconds grand total is that? And in part A, what was my velocity? 0.3333. You know what? That must mean that my displacement is going to be velocity times time. It's going to be 0.3333 times 6 seconds. It's going to be 0.33333 times 6 seconds. 1.9999. Oh, really? How many is that?
2.
And this is where those of you that rounded to 0.3, you might have an answer of 1.8. You're way off. I'll give it to you, but try not to round off. 2 meters. Direction.
Northeast.
I think just north, because we're traveling north on the graph. Dane, what's the time interval in part B from 6 to 10 seconds? Don't say 10, because it's not.
3 seconds, or 4 seconds.
4. So it's going to be velocity times time, where time is 4. What was my velocity? Oh, you know what? 0. I traveled 0 meters in that section. Is that okay, Justine? Hey, what's my time interval in part C? 2 seconds. Displacement is velocity times time. What was the velocity for part C? 2. The time is 2. Holy smokes. Ty, in your head, what's the answer here? Thank you. Direction. D. Sarah, what's my time interval in part D? Since you're focusing with me, my angel, joy of my heart. Look up. What's my time interval in part D? If I start at 12 and end at 16, how much time has elapsed? Thank you. And conveniently, if you continue looking up, what's my velocity in part D? What was it? So, you can say negative 6 meters or positive 6 meters south. Yes? Woohoo! Are you back? Okay. Is he back? E. Brady, my friend, what's my time interval here? I agree. Brady, my friend, what was the velocity in part E? Oh, 0. You know what? It's going to be 0 meters. You're standing still. It was 0 in E, yes? Yeah. Another horizontal section. F, my time interval, 2 seconds. What was the velocity? -1. So if I go velocity times time, it's going to be -1 times 2. Hey, I can do that in my head. -2 meters or 2 meters south. E says, what's the total distance that the object traveled in 2 seconds? In 20 seconds. I can get that from the graph. Distance is how far you've moved. I notice in this path, we travel away, we come back, and then we go backwards. How many meters do we travel away? 6? How many meters do we travel back? How many meters do we travel backwards? 2 more. Oh, stay the same color, Mr. Duke. Turns out the total distance this object traveled, 6 meters forward, plus 6 meters back, plus 2 more meters back behind where they started from, for a grand total of, Justine? I think you're right. Next page. Says, match each of the following descriptions to the appropriate line above. The object starts at the origin and travels south. That's got to be graph number 4, yes? Starts at the origin and heads negative south. With uniform motion, that means in a straight line. The object starts 2 meters south, right here. You know what? The only one that starts 2 meters south and heads north is graph number 2, 1 mark. The object starts at the origin and travels north. Which, this one here? This one starts 2 meters south. Isn't 2 meters south? Got to be there. Yeah? Starts at the origin, travels north. I think that's graph number 1. Starts 2 meters north and travels south. I think that's graph number 3. So 4, 2, 1, 3. Next page. Here's another position time graph. Complete the following table. We'll do the same thing as we did before. So slope, which is the velocity, include direction. Looks like up is north. Okay. Slope is rise over run. Oh! I have to be careful here. And Emily, the reason I have to be careful here is if I find the slope, although it's 4 squares, look at your y-axis. What's 1 square worth vertically? 2. The rise isn't 4. What's the rise really? So the rise is going to be 8 over Looks like on the x-axis we're going up by ones, Justice, so I can just count the number of squares. 8 over 4, or 2. Average velocity, 2 meters per second north. Yes? Whew. From 4 to 7, hey, that's a 0 and a 0. Woohoo! From 7 to 13, 3 squares up, but what's each square worth? 2. So what's my rise really if it's 3 squares, each worth 2? 6 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, that's got a slope of 1. There you're traveling at 1 meter per second north. From 13 to 15 seconds, got to be honest, I would do this right away. It's negative, it's downhill. What's my rise? 7 squares times 2 apiece. You know what? I think my rise is negative 14 over. What's my run? I think my slope is negative 7. So my velocity, you can either say negative 7 meters per second, or you can say 7 meters per second south. Last day we practiced this a bit more, so last day I gave you some homework, part 2. I said this was due. Some of you have already handed it in, and if you have, I'll give it back to you later on today. But was there any questions from the positive, negative, and zero slopes stuff you wanted me to go over? Any of these you were unable to get? A lot of this was on the take-home quiz. So what I have for you is a big review. It's going to look like this.